Okay, in this video we're talking about compositional elements or compositional principles. As we've talked about, your composition is a intentional arrangement of elements. These are some of the principles, rules, patterns, things that you can follow in thinking about how you arrange those objects within your design, within your composition, so they create the effect you want. The two we're going to talk about in this video should be familiar. We've talked about them before. They are balance and shape. So you can see here, by balance with this picture of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, even though we know this is just a picture on a screen, you still get sort of a anxious, tense, emotional feeling by seeing something that is imbalanced, like the tower here. The other thing we're going to talk about is shape, and this is the shapes that are formed in your composition, not necessarily the shape of objects in your composition. So what I mean is, if you look here, this is Portrait of Frida Kahlo from 1954 by Giselle Freund. And notice how the line of her body going up to her head, down to the books, and back across to the bottom of her dress, there is a triangular composition here. There is a shape in this composition that is primarily a triangle made up of this person and the bedside books here. So there's a triangular shape, a triangular composition going on in this photograph. Now, to recap, remember that points, lines, and planes are the fundamental units of visual design. They are your key ingredients. And before, we looked at how they are combined to create illusions of depth. And remember that once we got into depth, we were able to enter the additional design elements of surfaces and textures. Now, also, don't forget that surface and texture can refer to the objects in the design and or the medium in which the design is communicated. So you can see here several examples of work by the artist Yayoi Kusama. This is Horseplay and Other Performances from 1965, and then Ascension of the Polka Dots on Trees from 2006. So she's been doing this work for a long time. And notice that we have sort of an interplay on some smooth surfaces like skin here, where the polka dots are painted, and she's painting the polka dots on the man in the upper picture. But we also have the surface of the horse, the surface of the tree, the surface of the chair, and these have more texture than the smooth skin surface or the smoothness of her dress. So you can see both surface and texture being covered with these polka dots. If you're curious, she has a cognitive sensory issue where she sees these polka dots everywhere, and so her artwork is all about bringing out these polka dots that she sees all the time and bringing them out into the real world where other people see them as well. And these polka dots then are the center of her artwork that she's been doing for decades, and going back to the most fundamental element of design that we've talked about, the dot or the point, is the whole basically what all of her work is built upon. Okay, remember that composition then, whether it's music or a salad or a composed person, composition refers to an overall intentional arrangement of elements. In visual design, we're talking about points, lines, planes, shapes, space, form, values, surfaces, textures, all of them intentionally arranged into a composed design. Shape and balance, in terms of composition, refers to the idea that you may have shapes or planes in your design. You may have representations of balanced or imbalanced objects in your design, but also in terms of composition, we're talking about the overall shapes and imbalances created by the different elements in your design. So here in this painting by Nicolas Poussin, A Dance to the Music of Time from 1634 to 1636, we can talk about the rectangular shape of this column, the round shape of this hula hoop, circle, aura. I'm not sure what this thing is the angel's holding up here, rectangular shapes here, circular shapes here. But we can also refer to the triangular composition when you go from this little angel or cherub here up to the angel here, down to the other angel or cherub here. We get a triangular shape that is created within the composition. And then also, if you go around the boundary of this dancing circle here of figures, you get kind of a circular composition as your eye moves from her face, down her body and leg, across the feet of the dancers, up the front of this dancer, and then over their head. So we have a circular composition within a triangular composition. So this is what we mean by saying you have both the shape of the objects, like this rectangle here, but then you have also the shapes that are created within a composition, like this triangle and this circle. One of the reasons that we think about things in terms of shape is to break down the complexity of life, to simplify it into abstractions. So on one hand, this is visually breaking down perception into abstract components, such as geometric shapes. It makes it easier for us to think about them and rearrange them. So here we have this picture of a woman out of doors, and this picture can be reduced to geometric shapes: the oval of her face, the triangle of her dress, the square in this background. And the reason we do this is because finding order in chaos, such as shapes and patterns, just seems to be something humans instinctively do and find satisfaction in. So we can convert the chaos of the actual world into geometric shapes, and we can use that to recreate it in a design, or just to think about how the different components in this image are working together. We talked before about how balance refers to the idea that your two-dimensional design components, our brain looks at them as if they existed in gravitational 3D space. So in this image here, remember, you can see how it's very symmetrical and it's perfectly balanced because there's a lion here and a lion here, there's a bear here and a bear here, dog, dog, person, person. Each side has the exact same thing as the other side, making for a perfectly balanced composition. The idea with balance is that if the shapes in your design were toy blocks, would they balance on top of each other? If the elements were put on a scale, what would happen? It's not necessarily right or wrong. Balanced compositions can be soothing or boring. Imbalanced compositions can be annoying or exciting. But remember, it refers to the overall balance of the composition. We also have talked about symmetry, and that refers to the imbalanced arrangement of repeating or similar objects in a composition. Remember that the sense of balance can be affected by the perceived weight of objects, and that objects can seem to be lighter or heavier depending on their contrast with other elements, the comparative size of elements around them, the color that they are. Notice how the different, how the triangles have a different sense, sorry, not the triangles, the orange circles have a different feeling of balance, a different sense of weight. These objects are different shapes, but the same size and color, so they seem balanced. However, when I change the color of the square here, it seems to weigh less than the circle, and the composition now becomes imbalanced with the circle having more weight. And here's another religious image from 1910, and notice again how we have balance going right down the middle, number of people and images over here, number of people and images over here, balanced arc down on the bottom, also a circular shape that's being created in the composition. And in this Australian painting from 1981, Umari, how this we talked about is not as perfectly balanced, but it's entirely composed of dots, for one, going back to our basic element of composition, but also that there are circular shapes created in the composition, but there's not really much of a circular shape created by the composition. We have circles, but not really a circle. There's something of a triangle right here, and that's about it. The rest of the composition is pretty wild and organic, and it's sort of expressing the spiritual nature of this vision that the Australian artist is presenting. Okay, so those are the first couple of elements of composition. We'll look at several more in another presentation, but shape and balance, key thing to remember is that there is both the shapes in your composition and the shapes created by your composition, and that they can be balanced or imbalanced as if they existed in a gravitational environment.